Now, the critique of the Meta is actually, I think, a short-term one and a long-term one. We have another of our favorite sort of Meta stock rundowns that happened last week. And I think in what may come as a surprise to people, I think this one's kind of justified, to be totally honest, in that the last one was not, because it was based on fears about Meta's sort of core business model that were completely unfounded and out of touch with reality, as I laid out in
ATT-related fears, correct?
Yeah, as I laid out in sort of Meta. And so both Meta myths, well, no, it wasn't ATT fears. It was that this company is dead. TikTok has killed them. They're pivoting to the metaverse to save the business. They're spending $1 gazillion on this. They're spending all this money on CapEx. They're done. Like the MySpace moment has finally happened. And as I know, like that's happened twice in Meta's, or maybe more, but particularly it happened back in 2017, 2018, when I wrote Facebook Lenses, and it happened in 2022 with sort of the rise of short form video. And in both cases, the market was totally wrong, did not understand this company, did not understand its fundamental strengths, and was freaking out because they didn't understand the company. In this case, I do think that there's in Meta myths, I went through all these myths about how their core business is actually fine. They're actually doing, the core Facebook app is actually still being used and growing. Instagram is doing great. They actually have halted TikTok's growth in Reels, and their Reels product is accelerating, and they still haven't even monetized it yet. Like all these sorts of things, and all of which sort of turned out to be the case. And the whole ATT thing, they had to figure that out. They would, and they did. All that stuff is true today. I think the challenge for Facebook is in 2017, 2018, they had this problem of this stories was becoming huge, but it wasn't monetizing well. So it was dragging down the results. And my take was, who cares? That's actually a good thing. They have an opportunity to monetize this new space. Same thing in 2022. This Reels thing, like it's not just that they're trying to take on TikTok, they're actually killing their monetization on the way. That's fine. That's actually a good thing. They have a place to do that. What is that for Meta today? They're monetizing Reels now. They're monetizing stories. They've figured out ATT. What's the actual next vector of growth for their core product is actually, I think, today a reasonable question. Number two, they are spending astronomical amounts, not just on the metaverse, but on AI. And unlike Microsoft and Google, where that investment goes directly into products they sell, whether it be Azure on the Microsoft side or Google Cloud on the Google side, and into their core products, where Microsoft, like Copilot, sounds like it's doing well, an extra $30 per user per month or whatever it is, or like that's pretty impressive, right? Google, you have the questions around the consumer applications. I mean, of course, generative results in search can make it more compelling from a user, but as we've talked about, there's challenges as far as the business model, things on those lines. And I think appropriately that Microsoft is the most valuable company in the world, and Google is up, but not as much as sort of Microsoft in the AI age, although they're rapidly catching up. Meta, they're not selling the product. There's no Meta Cloud where you can go rent these GPUs. All this investment, all this money is for Meta itself. And how is this going to pay off? Okay, you're going to have the click-to-message ads where you can actually be talking to an as a human. That makes sense. That's a potential vector for growth. You can have people generating sort of video and generating content in their apps. Okay, that is good and true, and a reason I've been pro-Meta investing in generative AI, because they have the place where content is put. But it's worth noting that just like a retreat from 10 blue links is maybe somewhat less attractive as a business model for Google, even if the sort of result is theoretically better, a retreat from pure user-generated content is worse from Facebook. That's zero cost to Facebook of people generating content. They have to actually run GPUs for AI generating content. The cost structure is actually worse when it comes to AI generating content for Facebook than it has been sort of their entire sort of history. There is an sort of inherent retreat from the beauty of their business model implied in AI. That's a reason for concern. The big bet, in my perspective, for Meta is actually remains the metaverse. Because what's my theory on what will make the metaverse ultimately shine and be very compelling? It's when generative AI meets the metaverse, when you overcome all these challenges of content creation and asset creation, which are, we've already kind of hit the wall with AAA games, now going into VR, and you can actually go into these completely new environments that are customized to you, go into a different world, you and your friends together, sort of whatever it might be. There's a bit where these bets are, I think, maybe more interlinked than you might think. And it's reasonable, as I wrote in Meta Myths, that was the one I'm like, look, it's reasonable to be skeptical of the metaverse. Like, maybe it's never going to happen. And if the metaverse doesn't happen, that raises the risk of all this generative AI ultimately worth it for Meta also? Like, people could use other products. Now, the one thing we've talked about is generative AI for ads. I think that's a super compelling thing. But at the end of the day, like, I think it's more reasonable to be skeptical of Meta today. It requires more sort of faith in their ability to drive to a new future. And there's also higher reward. Like, if this all plays, like, they could be the windows of the metaverse, which would be insanely valuable, but it might not happen.
Skeptical today, skeptical of the lack of a growth story that seems plausible, or skeptical of the core business? Because I don't see any real weakness in where they are now, but is it a concern over where they may be as the landscape shifts in 5 years? Like, is it a
to be clear,
situation?
Yeah, no. And so previously, like, Meta would go down like 50%, right? Like, if you cut in half. Now it's down like 20% or something like that. I think it's actually, I thought those previous drops were unreasonable and just a complete lack of understanding of Meta and their strength in the market, because they implied not just that they don't have a growth story, but also they're doomed, right? Mm-hmm. No one, I don't think, even investors that drove, again, who can read too deeply in the psychology of the stock market. It's always dangerous to do that. I think people have finally been cured of their Meta is doomed sort of concept. They're not going anywhere, okay?
Right. Generating piles and piles of cash every quarter.
They are spending an astronomical amount of money and promising to spending even more. And the payoff is, I think it's reasonable to be quite uncertain about that. And there is a level of risk-taking and trust in this whole vision of the metaverse and generative AI that arguably Zuckerberg deserves, given how things have gone, but also I think is a lot of risk for a 20-year-old company, and I can understand folks wanting to check out on that. I just think all this, like, I'm not even sure about my theory of modifications here. That's why it's 12 paragraphs in. The metaverse might not be a thing. If it's not a thing, I think that a lot of the spending, not just on the metaverse, but on generative AI, could end up being kind of wasteful, and I can understand not wanting to be a part of that.